Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the show. Today on Lead for Good, we welcome John Kozyra, President and CEO of Avera St. Anthony's Hospital in O'Neill, Nebraska, where I hear today or recently it's been sub-zero temperatures. Thankfully, John brings a lot of warmth in everything he does. He's currently a charter member of Fulcrum and recognized for leading with clarity, compassion, and a long-term view of what strong community health systems can deliver. Throughout his career, he has guided teams through major growth initiatives, strengthened local partnerships, and built a culture where people feel seen and heard. His leadership reflects a steady commitment to meeting community needs while empowering employees to grow, contribute, and take pride in their work. And I'm excited that we're going to learn from his perspective on strategy, momentum, and engagement. This is going to be a really fun and enjoyable session. So let's jump in. Welcome to the show, John. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Always a pleasure to be with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And before we dive into the topic of driving vision, let's learn more about you and your leadership journey. So if you don't mind, please tell us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today.
Looking back, it was interesting reflecting on this because looking back, most people don't know this. I was primarily, or at least partially raised by my grandparents, and my grandparents they didn't have good health. And I always thought growing up that I would become a doctor one day. And so I went to college, declared as a biochemistry major, thought I wanted to be a doctor, and ultimately decided that that wasn't the right path for me. And I spent the first about 14 years of my career working in consulting, business development, and ultimately fundraising. And that's how you and I got to know each other.
Right.
Once I was in a foundation president role, though, in a hospital, I immediately knew that I had kind of come full circle, that I wanted to work in healthcare operations and hospital administration. And I took on a position as a foundation president, but immediately started a master's degree in healthcare administration. And started seeking out mentors that could help me think about making a career transition out of the fundraising world and into the hospital operations world. And I had a lot of really good advice, a lot of good guidance, a lot of great support when I was at Providence. And that ultimately led to my current position that I've been in now for 2 years as CEO of this hospital. I listened to one of your podcasts recently, actually, and Rod Hanners talked about his why. And I would say that my why, no matter the role I've had, has always been to make a positive impact in my community. And a lot of that ties back to my experience with my grandparents and kind of watching how they struggled to access healthcare, how they struggled with chronic disease issues that plague a lot of communities in America. And it has led me to do a lot of things that really have kind of driven my desire to grow and make a really positive impact through the work that I do. It's also led me to do a lot of other stuff like volunteer work and community boards and stuff like that I really find a lot of satisfaction in. And so that's been my journey to now. It's been a really interesting journey. I would say that it's somewhat unique, but I think that starting out on the consulting and fundraising side really sharpened a lot of the people skills and vision development skills and business development skills that I've been able to apply in my broader operations leadership role.
Yeah, so great. It's been a great journey, and it's been so fun to watch the movement upward for you over those 20 something years. You mentioned some mentors, some folks that had provided guidance and support along the way. I'm sure you have a long list of folks that have been helpful to you in advancing your career. Can you share, you don't have to name names or anything, but can you share a bit about who those people are and kind of what they did for you, how they helped you along your journey?
Yeah, I honestly, I could probably spend the next hour talking about all the
That's why I
people.
cautioned you to.
Yeah, don't take an hour. Yeah. So I am going to run through a few names though, because I think it's important. There's been people that have really been pivotal in my growth, my personal development. And honestly, Chris, I'm not doing this to make you feel good, but it starts with you. You know, when I was at CCS working with you, I learned a lot about seeking input from stakeholders and gaining alignment on where we want to go as an organization. When I was at Providence St. Mary, our chief executive, Randy, really supported my growth as a mentor in hospital operations. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to really make that transition. Kevin Manaman, who's now the COO at Sutter, taught me a lot about value-based care and alternative models for healthcare, got me really passionate about strategy work. Andrew Goldfrock, who's the CEO of Arrowhead Regional Medical Center. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have pursued the FACHE. And he really showed me why that was important and thinking about my professional development. In my current role, Benedictine and Presentation Sisters have taught me a lot about active listening and really meeting the needs of the community. But the number one person that I'm going to call out as probably the person that's made the biggest impact. So those have all been really impactful, pivotal people. But the number one is Eric Wexler. He's president and CEO of Providence St. Joseph Health now. When I was at Providence for several years, he and I would meet regularly, probably quarterly. And Eric made the same journey that I've made. He's just ahead of me in the path, way ahead of me, out of philanthropy and into healthcare operations and administration. And there were there were three things that Eric really drove into me as a mentor that I wanted to share. Number one is to be authentic as a leader. You know, don't try to be the leaders that others expect of you, but be you and authentically you at all times. He said, always be reading and learning. And so every time Eric and I would talk, he'd do this. He'd say, "See this book? Here's what I'm reading right now. What are you reading?" And he always talks about how
Amazing.
all leaders are readers, right? You have to be learning and challenging yourself at all times.
Great.
And he also pushed me to trust experts. You know, in healthcare, it's dynamic, it's very complex, and you have to lean on your experts. And so there's been a ton of incredible mentors, but Eric was probably the one that inspired me to say, you know what, I really want to do healthcare administration. And he pushed me towards that and supported me in that. And I'm thankful for his support too. And really all the ones I mentioned there.
Yeah, no, it's a great list. And it's so fascinating how you found people to give you the kind of support you needed in the moment, at the time of your journey. So we all stand on the shoulders of those that come before us, and you had some good shoulders to stand on for sure. Of all these different roles, and now you've been in quite a few different leadership positions and different opportunities to serve different organizations and do different things. What was maybe your favorite role, or what is your favorite role? I don't mean job, but I mean, what do you like the most about the work of leadership? You know, what is it that you love to do?
Yeah. Taking Eric's advice, I read a lot in all different genres, but my favorite business author is, and I always mess up his last name, but I think it's Patrick Lencioni or Lencioni. He wrote Five Dysfunctions of a Team, but one of his leadership books, he said, the ultimate role of a CEO is to define where are we going as an organization and why are we going there? Because if you don't have a vision, then how do you ever expect everyone to get on board and support the
Right.
direction you want to go? And I think that for me, bringing to life new opportunities and defining vision and really clarifying what's the hill we're climbing, guys? What's the North Star we're shooting for?
Yeah.
That's what lights my fire. That really is where my passion is. And I think that requires building strong cultures. It requires a lot of trust building, a lot of psychological safety to work towards those things, but ultimately working with an organization to say, where are we going and why are we going there? To me is what it gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, that's amazing. You might have just answered the next question as well, which is about your own personal nonprofit leadership philosophy. That seems to be a pretty strong statement, but are there other characteristics or traits or philosophies that you've developed about, you serve your own nonprofit leadership?
Yeah, no, the number one thing as a nonprofit leader is so every nonprofit has a mission and you have to stay focused on that mission. It's really easy, and I shouldn't say really easy, it's somewhat easy to say, well, maybe we should do this other thing and get distracted from the mission that we're focused on. And so number one is always, we have to stay focused on our mission. What is the positive impact we're trying to make? And number two, who's doing it with us? Because there's no such thing as this solitary lone wolf leader. We have to go together. And so, how are we doing it together?
Hmm. I love that. That's amazing. Thank you. Well, with each of our nonprofit leadership guests, we focus on key elements of nonprofit leadership. And for this conversation, John, we're exploring growth strategies, building momentum for projects, and employee and community engagement. So let's jump in and we'll start with growth strategies and the momentum behind them. So, to start off, when you step into a new initiative or some long-term project, what are the first indicators you look for to understand whether momentum is strong or needs some sort of rebuilding?
Yeah, it's and the way I'm understanding that question is kind of if you took over a project or a big initiative, that's hard to do. And there's probably five areas that I'd be looking at.
Okay.
Number one, does the project have a clearly defined plan and timeline? And if so, is it on track? So what's everybody's feeling? Are we on the right track here, guys? Number two, does everyone understand the vision and the plan of how to get there? And if so, are they excited about it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, four, the third one is, do stakeholders understand their role and responsibilities for moving it forward? So when I think about boards, and I think about community, does everyone know? Are we all aligned? Are we all working, in the same direction? The next one would be, does the project have dedicated resources? So this could be budget. So, okay, the project, we've got a dedicated budget, or it could be a fundraising campaign that's underway.
Mhm.
And then last, just more generally, are people excited about it?
Right.
I think if you got a project going on or a big initiative and people are just you're dragging through mud and it's not lighting fires. Um, I had so my regional president, Victoria, is such an insightful leader. And her and I were recently talking, and she made a comment. She says, "A good idea at a bad time is a bad idea," and that really resonated. So if people aren't excited about it and there's not a sense of buy-in, it makes it an uphill battle
Yeah.
to move something forward.
Well, you and I have worked on so many campaigns, some of them together, and you know the difference between um, when you have to pull people along and when you're being dragged by them because they're so excited. And the latter is just so much more fun and usually so much more successful. You can be successful in both environments, but boy, is it so much harder when you're begging people to come with you instead of sort of having them run with you to the finish line.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yep.
Great. Well, in your world, in the healthcare world, you're facing this constant pressure to innovate while managing daily demands. How do you balance strategic growth with the operational realities you face every day?
It kind of ebbs and flows. Uh, I think there's times when the volume on daily operations is turned up, right? And then there's times where you have a little bandwidth where you can really focus more on strategic priorities.
Good.
I think for me as a leader, the thing that my team probably is tired of hearing me talk about is we have to have strategic direction. We have to have things that are our North Stars, that have a sense of resilience that no matter what the operational demands are, no matter the circumstances, are always going to be driving us forward.
Mm.
And for us, over the last 2 years, we've defined that as in three areas. So number one is our people. So anybody that works in our hospital is our number one priority, because if they're not having a good experience, then we can never expect our patients to get great care. So number one is our people, number two is our patients, and number three is our community. And part of community is growing to meet the needs of our community. So growing services, expanding services.
Hmm.
And so I have to kind of tell a little story here that of recent success that highlights what I mean by this. And so, on October 7th of 2024, there was a building next door to my hospital that there was a gas leak, the building exploded, and it damaged the whole east side of our facility. I still remember showing up that morning, seeing 50-foot flames above the parish center that exploded, and seeing my hospital staff fully evacuated all of our patients out in a parking lot in the dark on the west lot. And kind of that, what just happened, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
this massive explosion, we fully closed the hospital. We opened an emergency clinic just to meet the sort of emergent needs of the situation. And then it took several weeks before we could really figure out how to reopen the hospital and so on and so forth. And here it is over a year later, and we're still doing some bigger projects like flooring and generators and stuff to recover from that. And so if we didn't have North Stars, those things, the people, the patients, and the community defined and strategies around that, we could have totally just basically thrown out the strategic plan for the last year and focused on recovering from this significant disaster.
Right.
But I'm really happy to say that over the last year, we also accomplished our strategic priorities. We maintained strong employee engagement. We launched a new quality and patient safety initiative on time that's having a positive impact. We expanded our services, so we're now offering wound care services, neurology services. We added a vascular surgery clinic, and we exceeded our budget by over $1 million ahead of expectations. And so we did that where we built enough resilience into our strategic direction as an organization to where circumstances change, but those North Stars, those guiding lights of our team and our initiatives don't. And we just keep moving that forward, even though we're overcoming what was an unprecedented and unforeseen disaster.
Yeah, boy, talk about a curveball being thrown your way. But so great that you were able to recover and show resilience and maintain your focus. Speaking of focus, how do you keep your team staying focused when sometimes the sort of end result of the work that you're doing is so far out into the future?
Yeah, I don't know that I have any super innovative responses here. I think number one is establishing timeline expectations early on so that people aren't thinking we're going to be done in 3 months when it's really a 3-year project or maybe longer.
Yeah.
And that's important also with boards to make sure everyone understands there's a process and there's a timeline and things could take longer than that. I think number two on this is to set achievable short-term goals and really celebrate every little step of the way.
Yeah.
And that's important that people feel like it's not just the finish line that gets celebrated, but that it's every step we go on. And then lastly is be willing to listen and learn and adjust,
Mm.
because sometimes leaders like us will have these ideas that, hey, this is going to be a great idea, and then it's not. And it's a problem when we won't look in the mirror and admit that and change direction, because sometimes it's not the right direction. And we have to own that and just adjust and reorient and be willing to be okay with that.
So such good advice, all three of those. How about data? How about community trends? What role do those play in shaping your, growth strategy?
It plays a really important role because there's a lot of people, myself included, that we think we have great ideas. But if those ideas don't stand up to the scrutiny of data, community trends, and financial analysis, then they're probably not that great of an idea, quite honestly. And so so I've had to learn in my journey over the last 20 years to not just go with what sounds right. Because I have to test my ideas against the good thinking of other people and the data that would either support it or not support that idea. And so I think data trends and financial analysis are critical parts to picking direction and having vision.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then when you think about bringing boards along, bringing staff along on some of these large scale changes and ideas and projects, what's helped you kind of align those people around a shared goal, a shared strategy?
They have to be involved from the start. So I'm gonna start there. They have to be involved right up front. The the idea that I would have any genius idea is not real strong. I might be able to connect dots and guide discussion, but true good thinking comes from a collaborative, well-informed approach. And so I think having your board involved, having community stakeholders, we host quarterly employee forums where I always ask for input from our employees on anything that we're working on. I want to make sure that we have a culture where everyone can provide input and that they feel like their opinion is heard and valued, because that's where the true innovation will come from, not from anything that I would be thinking about. And so to me, that's step one is if people don't feel like they've had their input shared, then how would you ever expect them to be supportive of the direction? And then two, uh, strong communication, over communication, almost to the point of you feel so repetitive of where we're going and reminding folks, remember we talked about it and this is the direction and this is what we're doing.
Right.
It's so important because we all get busy and we forget what we said we wanted.
Yeah,
And
right.
have,
So true.
we have to kind of keep communicating that and keep pushing that forward. And so, but I think that's to me, as I think about your question, is everyone needs to feel like they've been heard, that their voice matters, and that they've provided input because that is what's going to gain the greatest traction. And and at least here in my organization, I want people to know that I'm willing to listen and change my perspective based on their input, right? And that's
Wow.
input from anybody. That's input from the doctors, but it's also input from the housekeepers, right? And anybody in between, whatever. Everyone has a voice, and that's important. And I have to say, Chris, I work in a Catholic health system, and that really comes from the sisters right there. I interviewed a couple of our sisters recently. These are Catholic religious sisters, and I asked them. I said, "What's your best advice?" And they said, "Everybody has a piece of the wisdom, and don't everybody's voice needs to be heard." And I really have tried to take that to heart. I think that's really an important thing as we think about building connection and buy-in and enthusiasm for where we're headed as an organization.
Mm. Yeah, and we're aiming to get into a conversation about employee engagement and feeling valued. And I was going to ask you about what it looks like in practice to help people feel valued. And you said, it's them being heard and listening, and the sisters helping you kind of understand or really prioritize that muscle that we
Mhm.
all have, the listening muscle that might be the weakest muscle for the most people, unfortunately. And it's such a valuable muscle that needs to be trained and strengthened, right? Um, but as you think about that listening system, that listening muscle, how do you really go beyond surveys to sort of capture the real experiences or the essence of what you need to hear?
Yeah, and I want to just make one comment on the feeling valued piece,
Yeah.
because I think that something that a lot of us are not strong on, myself included, is being timely and responsiveness. And I remember early on with Eric Wexler at Providence, he said that he's the CEO of a major health system and he always responds to emails within 24 hours. And he said, he's like, if he can do it, then I can do it, right? And
Right.
so, and he says that's a way to show respect for folks. And so I think being responsive and even if you can't give them what they want,
Hmm.
take the time to explain why. I think that's another way to make people feel valued and show them that they're valued, not just make them feel valued, but show them that you respect and value them. But to your question about listening systems, my number one goal is to be present and accessible. So I want to make sure that employees that they feel they can approach me if they have concerns. And so it's often, every week I try to visit every department in the hospital at least once, just to check in. They probably get tired of me just popping in. Hey, how's it going? What's on your minds? Did you see the Huskers game on this weekend, or what'd you do for Thanksgiving? And but that's important for building a culture that leaders aren't these people that are off somewhere that wear a suit and tie and are scary, right? That's not what leadership is, at least to me. I every week I go visit patients, and so listening to what's on the minds of patients as it relates to our organization. Um, I have a pretty good routine. My executive assistant helps me with this. Is I try to do department visits every twice a year to each department, intentionally visiting with the whole department at every department in the hospital. We host employee forums on a quarterly basis, and so there's several ways, and every organization is going to be different because of the size and scope of ours. Those are the ways that I have found that I can stay connected and listening to the folks here in our organization. But I'm sure that would look different for every leader out there that's listening to this. And I will say that these things take a lot of discipline as a leader because
Right.
there's 100 fires that come up on your calendar
Yeah.
every week that will say, well, this has to take priority over that department meeting, which, really the department meeting doesn't have necessarily an agenda beyond, hey guys, what's going on? Um, but if you want to build a culture where people feel valued and heard, you got to make the time and you have to have the discipline to spend several hours a week being present and accessible and flexing that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what happens though when you do all of that listening and you receive feedback that is not so positive, that's difficult to hear. Like, what is your approach when something hard but honest rises to the surface?
Yeah. So I might be kind of unique in this. I don't think I am. I think a lot of leaders would say this. I love that feedback because
Okay.
that honest, direct feedback, even if it's hard to hear and maybe even a little embarrassing if I mess something up, is gold because it shows me maybe a blind spot in an area that I need to be more aware of.
Mhm.
And so that to me is actually some of the best feedback you'll get as a leader is when somebody's willing to be honest. I've had a couple visits this week with departments where they just said, I don't think we're doing enough in this area. And great. I welcome that because if they're not sharing that and giving me that insight, then I don't know. I might not be fully aware. I might have a total blind spot on that. Um, I think as a leader, it's important if I messed up on something that I own it. If needed, I apologize, and I try to make it right. Now, there are times though, health systems are complex, dynamic organizations, and there are times where um, there's things that are in your control as a leader, and there's things that aren't in your control. And
Right.
so really sifting through, is this something I can do something about, or is it something that I may or may not be able to do something about? And just being really transparent with that and saying, okay, I hear you, I value your input. Here's the things I know I can do, and here's the things I'm willing to consider or explore, but maybe I can't do. And just being really open and honest about that. And so those are I love that feedback because it gives me real insight into what's kind of back to what's the number one thing. I want people when they come here to feel proud of where they work and excited about where they work. And if they're showing up and they are bothered by something, then let's clear the air and let's try to fix it. And
Yeah.
that's my goal. Yeah.
Yeah. do you find that you are pretty much always prepared to receive some bad news or some difficult news? I mean, I feel like most leaders, um, they expect good things to happen. They're constantly driving for positive outcomes, but they're always prepared for the bad news, right? It's almost like expect bad and then pivot, or just appreciate when it's not, when it's good. It's like when the phone rings, are you just answering it with zero expectations? Or when the phone rings, like, if it's a phone call, it's probably not great because otherwise it would come to me via email or text or something. You're like, what?
Yeah, I think we get trained as leaders and for good purpose. So if there's something good happening, I want the leaders in my organization to get the pat on the back and to get the celebration, or our frontline employees. Like if they did something good, I want them to get the recognition and celebration for that. Uh, and usually, if something is bad enough to where they're calling and emailing me urgently about it, then it needs to come to me, and I need to, there is a box here, and I have to find a way to address it. And so we do get a little conditioned, I think, to almost expect more calls to be about bad things
Yeah, yeah.
when you're in a leadership role than about good things. But I don't know. I guess I look at leadership as a calling, and I think people
Thank you.
when you think about your role as a leader, you're probably somebody that's drawn to problem solving, drawn to service, drawn to helping others, and I think most leaders I talk to, they thrive in problem solving when things are bad,
Right,
and
right.
we want to
Good.
help solve it, right? And so I know for me, I don't love if my whole day is the problem phone calls and the fires that we got to put out. Um, but if there are times where I can be of help and be of service, then hey, I'm glad I can be here and do that.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, let's jump into community. And your hospital operates in a community where trust matters deeply. How do you listen to community voices in a sort of structured and consistent way?
It's been a learning curve for me here. I come from rural healthcare in the same way that northern Nebraska is rural healthcare, and building trust and credibility in a rural community is different and unique than a larger community, even a mid-sized metropolitan community. So I've had a lot to learn on that. Um, but interestingly, it comes down to just being willing to listen, always telling the truth, and always being kind. I mean, it almost sounds like the basics of human decency book or something,
Right.
but but I think that's really, if you're when I go out into the community, um, I really try to take time with anybody that has input on our organization. I'm willing to have a coffee or whatever that needs to be. Um, I go to our Rotary clubs. I go
That's what I
to
was going to ask. I was like, how do you engage with the
yeah.
community? How do you choose to engage? Is it, with Rotarians? Is it going to church? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, that it's going to be different. As I think about other CEOs that would listen to your podcast, it's going to be different in every community.
Right.
And so you got to find the areas where people congregate that are your trusted kind of stakeholders. And so for us, I go to the Rotary Club, and that's been a great place to connect with folks. We do Chamber of Commerce events. There's a coffee shop in town that I know is kind of a hangout spot. And so you just kind of find your places
Great.
uh, that you do that. We've hosted community town halls, and we've asked for direct input. We just went through a facility master planning process with an architecture firm, and as part of that, I demanded that we have a community town hall and ask for input into what people want from our organization. And people seem to really appreciate that. So there, that's going to look different in every community, and you just have to find where are those people that are influencers, that are stakeholders that you really just want to make sure you have FaceTime with and be intentional about that. Because again, that takes discipline in the same way that being present in your organization takes discipline, because there's always a fire to work on. There's always a problem to solve, and we have to take the discipline to be listening.
Yeah. Well, is it your sense or your experience that community feedback actually shapes the programs and partnerships that you pursue?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have to say, I'll give an example. We have been looking into different specialty care services we'd like to provide here. And I created a short list of what I think were our best opportunities. And I went to the community, to my different groups and just said, what do you guys think? Um, and one of those services, they said, no, we'll keep driving down the road an hour because we don't think we could do it as good here as they do it there.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm gonna knock that one down the list and maybe prioritize other opportunities that we think we want to pursue. Because if the community isn't going to use a new service, then we're wasting our time. And so I really think as part of the initial analysis of any new initiative or service or program, that community input is really, really critically important, because if you don't have buy-in and engagement there, then you might be spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. Well, what about sort of the team? How do you help your team understand the importance of being present and available in the community? Is that something that you coach up? Is that something that you prioritize?
Yeah, actually, I guess I benefit because our mission statement at Avera directly says our mission is to make a positive impact in our communities. And
Okay.
so I have a lot of backing, from decades of our organization forming to support that our role is to make a positive impact in the community. And when we look at our strategic priorities, they're all framed with the output being positive impact in the community. And so we talk a lot about this, and all of us are involved on boards. All of my leaders, at least, we're all involved in different community projects. We've hosted community cleanup days. We sponsor community activities, and so community engagement is front of mind. And some people ask, well, why are you putting such an emphasis on that? And there's a few reasons why. Number one, we're the largest employer in this region. And
Okay.
so we owe it, in my opinion, to our community. Our community trusts us as their healthcare partner, and we owe it to our community to give back and to be a good community partner, to be listening, to be engaged. But there's a second part that I'll highlight for leaders, is that it builds resilience. So if something goes bad at your organization, if your community likes and trusts you, you'll weather that storm better, in my opinion. And so having community partners and having community relationships is just so important, because if it's inevitable that something's going to go wrong eventually, and you want to have
Right.
some resilience in that okay, the community trusts us, the community knows our intent, and if we messed up on something, they know that we'll make it right. And I want to make sure that our community has 100% trust in our goal to make a positive impact. And that's part of why we put such an emphasis on that.
Mm, I love that. It's so good. Well, what do you see as the greatest opportunity for health systems and hospitals like yours, sort of to strengthen community trust over the next decade, let's say?
Oh boy, that's kind of anybody's gamble, Chris. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of uncertainty in healthcare right now. I think there's going in the next decade here. This is John's opinion here.
Yeah, of course. Well,
This is
John, as my pastor would say, John in the white spaces
There
here.
you go. Yeah.
You
So
know.
so it's in my opinion, I think there's going to be a rapid adoption of technology and the use of artificial intelligence. And so that's going to change how people access care. It might be less human to human centered. I mean, there's some ways it won't, but in some ways it will. And so that'll change people's experience of healthcare. There's federal policy changes that are coming down the line now that would look at reduced reimbursement rates and maybe lower rates of insured people with some of the changes there that we're all kind of bracing for, and you're seeing in the news, like in Becker's and stuff. And so the way people access care, the way people pay for care 10 years from now is probably going to look different than it does today. And I think that navigating that change with communities, especially rural communities, is going to be very tricky.
Right.
Because communities, I've worked in 3 big health systems, I've worked in different types of communities, but every community wants the same thing. They want excellent healthcare close to home. They all want that. And they all deserve that.
Right.
But how do we do that in a way that meets their expectations? I'm not sure. I don't know what that's going to look like, but some of the things that I'm thinking about is, number one, when we have to make changes in response to changes in healthcare, I think just having a real open, transparent conversation, and just being really transparent. Here's what's going on. Here's why we're doing this. And hopefully in a spirit of building trust, people will understand that and appreciate the transparent dialogue. I think the second thing that comes to mind is back to this just being engaged in the community, staying well connected. So because a lot of perception of healthcare organizations happens person to person in side conversations at the Rotary meeting, and it's not necessarily in more formal settings. And so staying connected with stakeholders in that informal network. And then I'll make one comment here is I think the future of healthcare is going to be less and less about competition and more about partnership. And so as we look at some of these changes that are coming, I think as healthcare leaders, we're going to have to continue to find innovative ways to partner, to build networks of care, and to create more and more value out of healthcare than maybe historically has been there. And so we have a lot of challenges on the horizon. This next 10 years is going to be transformational, and I'm excited for it. And I think most healthcare leaders are, but we're also kind of like, okay, where's this going? and just trusting that we're all going to be working together, sharing learnings and navigating it, together.
Yeah. Well, I know that it's impossible to know what the future will look like, especially in healthcare where so much is going to change over the next 10 years. But I'm actually very confident. Why am I confident? I'm confident because leaders like you are going to help these complex organizations that are supporting very complex communities with good health solutions. So I'm just so grateful that you are where you are and that you're continuing to grow in your leadership in the healthcare and nonprofit space, because we're all going to benefit from it. So just wanted to thank you for helping us tackle this important topic on the podcast today, but also just being a great leader in general. And I can't wait to see what the next 20 years looks like for you and all the people that will benefit because of your leadership. So unfortunately, though, even though you and I could go on forever and ever and just talk, we'll put a period on the end of this podcast sentence and move on for today. But if you've enjoyed this show, please take a minute to subscribe, follow us. Check out also our other 2 podcasts, Mastering Fundraising and The Nonprofit Edge. In all 3 of these podcasts, we talk to extraordinary leaders, learn from them about their journey, and also really dig into some important topic that matters in the nonprofit space to learn and to grow ourselves. But until next time, just want to wish you all the best and encourage you all to do what you can for this world by leading for good. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.